There is something about royal secrets that grips the world in a way nothing else can. Presidents come and go. Celebrities rise and fall. But the monarchy holds something older, deeper, and far more mysterious. Behind those towering palace gates are stories that were never meant to be told. Stories locked away in silence. Stories protected for generations. And sometimes those stories are hidden in places no one expects. Like a safe that belonged to one of the most powerful women in modern history, Queen Elizabeth II. For over 70 years, she ruled not just as a monarch, but as a symbol of stability, calm, duty, discipline. She was known for her silence, her restraint, her ability to keep secrets. But when she passed, something changed, because there were things only she knew, and someone had to uncover them. That responsibility fell to the one person the Queen trusted more than almost anyone else, her daughter, Princess Anne. Princess Anne was never the loudest royal. She didn't chase headlines. She didn't seek attention, while others became global celebrities and remained something else entirely: loyal, focused, unshakable. The Queen once called her strength invaluable, which is why, when the time came, Anne was given access to the Queen's most private possessions. Not public records, not ceremonial jewels, but personal things. Things locked away, and among them a safe that had remained closed for years. No cameras, no announcements, no public knowledge, just silence. Imagine a moment, the quiet room, the weight of history in the air, the realization that whatever lay inside had been deliberately hidden, not from the public, but from the world itself, because the Queen understood something few others did. Not every truth could survive the spotlight. And as Princess Anne prepared to open that safe, there was one name that carried more tension than any other. One name that had defined decades of controversy, whispers, and emotional turmoil. Camilla. To understand why, you have to go back to a time when the monarchy itself stood on the edge of collapse. Back to the woman who changed everything forever, Princess Diana. Because Diana didn't just marry into the royal family. She transformed it. She broke the illusion of perfection. She exposed the human side of royalty. And in doing so, she revealed fractures the palace could never fully repair. Fractures that would define Camilla's place in royal history. Fractures that Queen Elizabeth spent decades managing, protecting, and containing. So, when Princess Anne finally turned the key, it wasn't just a safe she was opening. It was the past, and what she found inside would raise questions no one was prepared to answer. Questions about loyalty, about truth, and about what the Queen really thought in her final years. Because sometimes the greatest royal secrets aren't spoken aloud. They're hidden, waiting for the right moment. There was a time when the royal family existed behind an invisible wall. You never saw their private lives. You never heard their personal thoughts. They appeared on balconies, waved to crowds, and then vanished back into a world no ordinary person could enter. They were distant, untouchable, almost mythical. But that world no longer exists. Somewhere along the way, the monarchy stopped being just an institution and became something else entirely. It became global entertainment. Today, every royal gesture is analyzed. Every expression is decoded. Every appearance becomes headline news within seconds. Cameras follow them everywhere. Millions watch their every move, and billions want to know what happens behind closed doors. But this transformation didn't happen overnight. It happened slowly. And it happened because the palace realized something they had never faced before: the power of modern media. For most of the 20th century, the monarchy controlled its image carefully. Access was limited. Interviews were rare. The public saw only what the palace allowed them to see. And at the center of that carefully controlled system stood Queen Elizabeth II. She understood that mystery was power. Silence was protection. Distance was survival. She rarely explained herself, rarely showed emotion in public, rarely broke the illusion of calm certainty, and because of that, she remained one of the most respected figures in the world. But outside those palace walls, everything was changing. Television brought the royal family into living rooms. Newspapers became more aggressive. Photographers became relentless. And suddenly, the monarchy wasn't just being observed. It was being watched closely, constantly. The public didn't just want ceremonies anymore. They wanted stories, drama, emotion. They wanted to know the people behind the crowns. And that's when the royal family faced its greatest challenge. Because once the cameras arrive, they never leave. Some members of the royal family adapted to this new reality better than others. One of them was Princess Anne, and understood the danger of attention. She saw how quickly public admiration could turn into public scrutiny. She chose discipline over popularity, duty over celebrity. She became known as one of the hardest-working royals, quietly carrying out hundreds of engagements every year. No drama, no scandals, no distractions. She stayed focused on the mission her mother had spent her entire life protecting. But not everyone could remain in the shadows, because soon someone would arrive who would change everything. Someone who didn't just attract media attention, she became the center of it. Princess Diana. From the moment she entered the royal family, something shifted. She was young, beautiful, emotional, relatable. The public didn't just respect her. They loved her. And that love created something the monarchy had never experienced before, a royal superstar. But fame comes with a price, because the same cameras that lift you up can also tear you apart. And as Diana's popularity grew, so did the tension inside the palace. Tension that involved another name, a name that would quietly shape the future of the monarchy. Camilla. At first, her presence remained hidden, unspoken, carefully managed, but secrets have a way of surfacing, and when they did, nothing would ever be the same again. Meanwhile, back inside the palace, Princess Anne continued her quiet duty, watching, observing, understanding the cost of royal life in a way few others could. She saw the pressure. She saw the fractures. She saw the emotional toll it took on her family. And perhaps most importantly, she saw how her mother carried the burden of protecting it all, which is why, years later, when Anne stood in that silent room, staring at the Queen's safe, she understood something deeply personal. This wasn't just about documents. This wasn't just about history. This was about truth. Truth that had been carefully guarded. Truth connected to Diana. Truth connected to Camilla. And truth that only the Queen herself had the power to protect. But now, the responsibility had passed to Anne. And once that safe was opened, there would be no turning back. The moment Princess Diana stepped into the royal spotlight, the world felt it. She wasn't just another royal bride. She was different. There was a softness to her, a vulnerability, an emotional openness that people had never seen in the royal family before. When she smiled, it didn't feel rehearsed. When she spoke, it didn't sound scripted. She connected with people in a way that transcended tradition. And the public fell in love instantly. But inside the palace, things were far more complicated. Because Diana wasn't entering a fairy tale. She was entering a system built on rules, on hierarchy, on emotional restraint, a system designed to protect the crown at all costs. And at the center of that system was her husband, King Charles III. At first, the world saw perfection. The wedding was watched by hundreds of millions. The dress, the ceremony, the kiss on the balcony. It all looked like something out of a storybook, but behind the scenes, cracks were already forming. Because Charles carried a history with him, a history that involved someone else. Camilla. Their connection went back years, long before Diana entered the picture. It was complicated, emotional, persistent, and even as Charles fulfilled his royal duty by marrying Diana, that connection never fully disappeared. At first, Diana tried to adapt. She tried to become what the palace needed her to be. But she was young, just 20 years old when she married into one of the most powerful institutions on Earth. She was surrounded by expectations she couldn't fully understand. And worst of all, she was alone. The cameras followed her everywhere. Every outfit became global news. Every gesture analyzed, every expression scrutinized, but no one saw what was happening behind closed doors. No one saw the emotional isolation. No one saw the pain, except, perhaps, Queen Elizabeth II. The Queen wasn't cold, despite how she sometimes appeared. She was disciplined, controlled. She believed deeply in duty. She had spent her entire life sacrificing personal emotion for institutional stability. She understood suffering, but she also understood responsibility. And responsibility meant protecting the monarchy above everything else, even when it came at a personal cost. As Diana's emotional struggles became harder to hide, the media grew more aggressive. Rumors spread, stories leaked. The fairy tale began to unravel in public view. And at the center of it all was the unspoken truth everyone suspected. Camilla had never truly gone away. When the truth finally surfaced, it didn't just shock the public. It shattered trust. Diana's famous words would echo across history. There were 3 of us in this marriage. That sentence alone changed everything. The public took sides, and overwhelmingly they sided with Diana. She became more than a princess. She became a symbol of vulnerability inside an institution built on emotional silence. And the palace faced a crisis unlike anything it had experienced before. Because this wasn't just a private matter anymore. This was global. Every headline chipped away at the monarchy's image. Every revelation created new questions. Every emotional moment exposed the human cost of royal life. And through it all, Queen Elizabeth remained silent, watching, managing, protecting. She understood that reacting emotionally could make things worse. So she stayed calm, careful, controlled. But privately, she was carrying the weight of it all, because she knew something the public didn't. The monarchy was more fragile than it appeared, and the choices made during this period would shape its future forever. Meanwhile, Princess Anne watched everything unfold from the sidelines. She saw Diana's rise. She saw her suffering. She saw the public's love, and she saw the damage it caused inside her family. And wasn't emotional in public. She didn't give interviews. She didn't express opinions openly. But she understood more than most. She understood loyalty. She understood sacrifice. She understood duty. Which is why, years later, standing in front of her mother's private safe, she knew whatever was inside wasn't just history. It was personal. Because the safe existed during that time, during Diana's suffering, during Camilla's controversy, during the Queen's silent endurance. And that meant one thing. Whatever lay inside that safe had witnessed the most painful chapter in modern royal history. And now, Princess Anne was about to see it for herself. Just when the monarchy thought it had survived its most painful chapter, history began to repeat itself. A new generation arrived. A new love story captured the world. And once again, everything seemed perfect at first. When Prince Harry introduced Meghan Markle to the world, the reaction was explosive. She was confident, independent, American, an actress with her own identity and voice. Their relationship felt modern in a way the monarchy had never experienced before. The public was fascinated. Here was a royal couple that didn't feel distant or untouchable. They laughed openly. They held hands in public. They showed affection without restraint. To many, they represented the future. But inside the palace, the mood was far more cautious. Because the royal family had seen this pattern before. They knew what media attention could do. They knew how quickly admiration could turn into pressure. And they knew how dangerous emotional openness could be inside an institution built on silence. At the center of it all was still the steady presence of Queen Elizabeth II. By this point, she had witnessed everything. The rise and loss of Diana, the controversy surrounding Camilla, the relentless evolution of media, and now a new storm was forming. At first, Meghan appeared to embrace royal life. She attended events. She smiled beside Harry. She represented the crown on the global stage. But slowly, subtle cracks began to appear. The media scrutiny intensified. Headlines became harsher. Rumors spread about tensions inside the palace. And then came the moment no one expected. Harry and Meghan stepped away. Not quietly, not temporarily, but publicly. They announced their decision to step back from royal duties and build an independent life. The shockwaves were immediate. This wasn't just another royal disagreement. This was an earthquake. For the first time in modern history, a senior royal couple chose distance over duty, chose personal freedom over institutional expectation, chose their own path over the crown. The public was divided. Some supported their decision, seeing it as an act of courage. Others saw it as abandonment. But inside the palace, the emotional impact was far deeper than the public could see. Because this wasn't just about duty. This was about family. For the Queen, it was another moment of quiet endurance. She never lashed out publicly, never expressed anger, never revealed personal emotion. Instead, she issued calm, measured statements, just as she always had. But those closest to her understood something important. Each crisis left a mark. Each controversy added weight. Each emotional fracture reminded her how fragile the monarchy truly was. And through it all, one person remained constant, watching, supporting, protecting, Princess Anne, and never stepped away. She never sought independence from duty. She never allowed personal emotion to override responsibility. She remained exactly what her mother needed her to be: reliable, loyal, unbreakable, which is why, when Queen Elizabeth's life came to its final chapter, there was no question who would carry certain responsibilities forward, and understood the monarchy in a way few others could. She understood its strengths, its weaknesses, its secrets, and most importantly, its vulnerabilities, because the truth is, the monarchy survives on perception, on stability, on continuity, and secrets play a role in maintaining all three. Secrets that protect reputations, secrets that preserve unity, secrets that prevent emotional fractures from becoming institutional collapse. So when Princess Anne stood before the Queen's private safe, she wasn't just opening a container. She was opening decades of carefully protected truth. Truth connected to Diana. Truth connected to Camilla. Truth connected to the Queen's private thoughts during the most turbulent moments in royal history. And perhaps truth connected to decisions that shaped the monarchy's future. Because Queen Elizabeth never acted without purpose. Every letter she kept, every document she protected, every item she locked away meant something. And now, for the first time, Princess Anne was about to see what her mother had chosen to preserve. The room was silent. No cameras, no officials, no public record of what was about to happen. Just Princess Anne and the safe. This wasn't a ceremonial moment. There were no crowns, no jewels, no glittering symbols of royal power. This was something else entirely. Something far more personal. This safe had belonged to Queen Elizabeth II. And Queen Elizabeth was not a sentimental woman in the traditional sense. She didn't keep things casually. She didn't preserve objects without reason. Everything she held onto served a purpose, emotional, historical, or institutional. She had lived through wars, political crises, family heartbreak, public scandals, and she